Hey, what's up, YouTube? What's up, Facebook? What's up, world? What's up, internet? Matthew here. Check out my Facebook if you want to. You could search Matthew Harrison on Facebook. I'll bring up my Facebook. Obviously, this is my YouTube channel. Please like, comment, subscribe. I will try to do the same, especially subscribe. But I'll try to only comment or like if it's really honest. And vice versa. I'm not gonna try to make you I'm not gonna try to make you comment or like if you don't want to, but if you do so feel inclined, I would greatly appreciate it. And so I'm gonna make a new video series, and this video series is gonna be called cRaZy Witching Stories. And I'm a Christian, and I was born a human being. When I was young, I chose Christ. And then I became agnostic as a teenager, and then as a young adult, I re-invited Christ into my life, and was a reborn Christian. And when I was young, my mother is a librarian, and she played the movie and gave us the book Roald Dahl's Witches, which, praise God, hallelujah, that movie has had such a huge purpose and place in my life. It's insane. But that's a whole nother story, a whole nother episode of cRaZy Witching Stories. So that being said, other than that, growing up, to me, a witch was just a fictional character. It was just a like a Halloween character. Excuse me, trying to do my best with the fresh air over here. It was just a made up fictional like a fairy tale. There was no such thing in my mind as a real witch. I just didn't believe in him. I didn't know it was real. I'm not gonna get too far into it on that note, but to me, the best way I can put it is that it was completely fictional. You wouldn't be able to tell me any different from Dracula and Mickey Mouse and a witch on the Disney Channel. So this is the first cRaZy witching story, and it's kind of fitting in that manner because when I was I was 27 or 28 years old. I was living in a sober living house in Sacramento, California. I was obviously clean off drugs and alcohol, and I met a girl who, I'm not going to bring her name into it out of respect, because although she ended up being very evil, I still believe she had a divine purpose in my life, and I still care for her for that reason. God used her to really change my life and give me a better life and teach me who I am. And excuse me, like I said, it's the end of my day, so I'm still catching up. And so it's like, even if at the end of our journey she chose to be evil and be a liar and a violent person, she still showed me a whole nother side of life and love that I didn't know existed. So here I am, 27, 28, whatever. I've been to prison. I've been on drugs and alcohol. I'm clean. I'm working. And I've been, for who I am in my own perspective, I'd been through a lot in life. I felt like I'd been through a lot, and I didn't really know what else I wanted in life. I didn't really understand, I not that I didn't understand, but I just didn't. I was really, really really. The word is it's not lethargic. They use the word in Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. It means you kind of just accept where you're at and just go with it. You you don't really reach for more, and you don't really go lower. It's complacent. I was extremely complacent, and I had been most of my life. I always settled for what jobs I had. I always settled for what, and that's why I miss this woman, because she really pushed me and taught me to go for what I want and do what I want along with God. I mean, obviously all glory goes to God, but my relationship was so close with her that it brought me closer to God. My relationship with her showed me that my real true higher power, and my higher power was always God. But it showed me that my number one mental priority and relationship was God, not another human being, or not, a woman or whatever. It showed me that she, so in that terms, I give her credit, because she spent so much money and went so far out of her way to make me happy. And at the end, even though it might have been fake, or like she chose to go on the other path or whatever, it doesn't change the fact how much time and money and resources she sacrificed to try to build, and she did. She taught me a lot, and she gave, and for that, I'm thankful, and I give and all glory to God for every part of my good thing in my life. But it's not going to change the fact of how much emotion and time I invested. I invested with her, and sorry if people driving around are playing jokes right now or something. And so when I first met this woman, I was completely closed off in my heart to having a wife. I wasn't exactly the perfect, boyfriend or husband, but every woman that I had given my all to and completely opened up to, she had taken advantage of me. So every woman in the past had either robbed me or stolen from me or cheated on me or done something to me to where I had invested too much and got hurt in return. So I was on Tinder, and I met this girl, and when I met her, I told her, I said, listen, I'm gonna make up a name for her, and the joke is gonna be Mary, because that was our whole thing, was we were supposed to get married at one point. Excuse me, sorry about that. And so I met Mary, right? And obviously, like I said, that's a fake name. So I met Mary, and at the time, I wasn't a man whore. I wasn't a man whore, but I was very loose with my sex life. I was pretty much having sex with every girl who either offered it or accepted having sex with me. It wasn't a matter of not using protection, which, side note, anyone who's having sex, whether you're in a serious relationship, not, unless you're trying to have a kid, I recommend wear condoms, buy condoms and wear condoms. It's that simple. Don't get the chance to have an STD. Don't give a chance to get pregnant. Buy condoms and wear them. If she tells you not to wear one, don't have sex. There's plenty of a million other chances to have sex. And if she doesn't want to have sex with you for not wearing a condom, that's an issue. Your sexual partner should respect your needs and your desires. If he tells you that he doesn't want to wear a condom, don't have sex with him. If it gets weird, like you think they're poking holes in the condom, or they're the ones supplying the condom, and it's weird, do not. I promise you, the sex is not worth an STD, and the sex is not worth an unwanted pregnancy. You can have sex a million other times with a million other partners that'll be just as good or better. You will actually feel better, in my opinion, from walking away and being a stronger person than orgasming and realizing, oh, now it's nothing happening. The buildup is gone, and I may have an STD, or I might have been pregnant. Trust me. So, that being said, so I met this girl, Mary is what we're going to call her. And she's the sweetest thing, right? She's cute. She's sweet. She always wants to hang out. She wants to buy me food. She wants to take me out and hang out all the time. She's like head over heels. And I tell her, look, Mary, right now, I'm a pretty wild guy. I'm not gonna lie. I live a wild life, and I'm not ready for a serious relationship. And I tried to explain to her that I don't think we should have sex without you knowing that I'm not ready for a serious relationship, and also that I'm just still crazy. Like, I'm still crazy. Like, I'm not ready to be in some, and because she wanted something serious. She had been supposedly raped as a child, which I still don't know if it's true or not, but I'm pretty sure it's true, that she had some serious sexual trauma as a child, because as a teenager, she had ended up being a prostitute in California, which meant she was on the internet. Doesn't mean she was walking around on the street like other parts of the world. Prostitution in that part of California at the time basically meant someone took some really nice pictures of you and put you on, there was 2 main websites, and then from there you were like in a selected category of women and you had a certain price. And they had networks of pimps who, from the Bay Area to Sacramento, who had specific types of women and different age groups, whether they looked young, big, small. It was very, like, and I was not a pimp in it, and I never bought a prostitute off it. But the way that it was explained to me, it was very, like, point and click based on description. It wasn't like, yo, girl, go hit the strip. Now, there was parts of Sacramento and parts of wherever that I'm sure had that, the whole street life of prostitution. But the girl that I met was actually not, and this is like 10 years before I met her. And after when she was younger, like I said, this is when she was like 19 or 20. And when I met her, she was like 27 or 28. And so she had also, after that, she said that she started feeling empty, and she started feeling like just a piece of flesh that was used for sex or something, some phrase like that. And then she said she also had become a phone sex operator and a sexual masseuse. So like a sex job, a hand, whatever, excuse the explicit content. She was like it was a masseuse that it was perfectly known that this was like a happy ending, a sexual massage. It wasn't a therapeutical or a health related massage. It was clearly, so it's another form of prostitution. And then eventually she stopped all of it. And for the sake of the story, and it's interesting enough, she ended up becoming involved with BDSM communities and like not like public sex, but like humiliation type, like really, really off the wall fetishes and sexual groups. But by the time that I met her, this was a good 7 or 8 years after her, and she wasn't like a filthy, nasty person. She was extremely cute and beautiful, very well kept. She was a phlebotomist at the time, and she was a medical professional. She was independent. She paid her own rent. She had a car, and she was just the most sweet, beautiful, like, awesome thing. And for me, someone who had been listening to my rap music my whole life, and been to prison, and like, to meet, and I dealt with things like having a career and providing for myself and wanting more, and so on and so forth. And So that being said, it was like, I met this girl and she has a job, she has a career, she has a car, she's a phlebotomist, and all that. Excuse me again. And here I am, 27, 28, in a sober living with a criminal record, working at a food establishment, or a grocery store or whatever. Actually, I think she even pushed me to get a better job at a grocery store. And I meet this girl who's like been through a lot and been through craziness, and like is a part of that, like, America. Because you got to realize, in America, the whole like pimping prostitution culture is very like, I'm not saying it's attractive, but it's very like it's a huge part of rap music. And just like, people that are pimps are like the cool guy, right? Or like, it's glorified in our culture. It's glorified as a superiority, if not necessarily for a prostitute, but just like that involved. Like, for me, for if you, like, let's say you walk into a group of guys at a sober living house or wherever, and one of them starts talking about how they know about these websites, or how they know these girls, or they know this, or they, like, that person automatically became like almost like a gangster. Like, in California, in America, like, a gangster is like a glorified position, like a football star, or a cool guy at campus, or you know. I'm not saying it's a good thing, and I'm not saying it's true. I believe that everyone should be confident and confident and sure of in Christ of who they are, and that's who I am today. But in American culture, in music, and in schooling, and in pop culture, that, you know, a lot of that other stuff exists, whether it's gangsters or you know, pretty boys or pimps or whatever it is. Like, different things that are actually not that good are glorified. And I'm not talking about a gangster like Al Capone, like a Godfather, like a made man. I'm talking about, like, you know, like the tough guy or whatever. So she tells me this whole about her life, about how she's changed, and she just has become such a different person who wants to settle down and get married and meet someone. And at the beginning, like I said, I warned her that I'm crazy, that I was like sexually crazy for women, and I was not ready for a committed relationship. And she still continued to pursue me in a way of buying me gifts, taking me out, dating me. And I never told her until we were actually living together and you know, in theory married, that I had been seeing other girls. But in 100%, I'll stand before God that I warned her, that I told her when I met her, we should not have sex, we should not continue to hang out if you don't realize that I'm not ready to be committed. I mean, why else would you tell someone you're not ready to be committed? Why else would you tell someone that you live a crazy life and that you're not ready to give them what they want and you're not ready to be committed? Because I didn't want to tell her what I was doing every weekend. I didn't want to tell her where I was on the nights I didn't see her. And that's what I was trying to warn her without saying, hey, I'm going to go screw other girls, or I'm still screwing other girls. And I was still young. I was still so young and immature that I didn't know I should have just said that. I should have just said, hey, I'm still screwing other girls. I'm still seeing other girls, unless you want an open, like, blah, blah, blah. But I did my best. I did my best to basically tell her, hey, get lost. But she still wanted to have sex, and she still wanted to hang out. So we did this for a year. And then eventually I just came around, and my heart just changed. And I fell head over heels in love for her. Every time that I ignored one of her text messages, or every time that every time that I, you know, saw another girl, I just started feeling so bad and so guilty and so low. And eventually, we, you know, me and her, it was like my life was going from like, when I first found Christ, not as a kid, but like as a teenager, when I was reborn, it was like my life went from black and white to like color. And then when I the second time, was when me and Mary, you know, ended up, when I decided to commit, I just told her, hey, I want to do this. I want to be your boyfriend. I want to be your man. And it was perfect. It was amazing. We decided we were going to get an apartment together. We decided we were going to get married. It was amazing. And so we did that. We got an apartment. We started sharing vehicles. We started sharing pets. We started sharing, I mean, this might sound weird to some people, and I have absolutely no involvement with any type of incest or any type. Thank God, no matter how many bad times I've had in my life, or no matter how many rough situations I've lived in, I've never had any sexual stuff in my own family. I've never had any rape or sexual crap between my brothers and sisters or my mom and dad. Other people have, and that's terrible and that's sad. But I have not, thank God. So, but what I want to say is that, like, our relationship became so close as man and woman that it was almost like so close that we were brother and sister. Like the way that we, you know, walked around the house, and the way that we, you know, the way how honest we were with each other, and the way how, like, we, you know, the way we walked around naked, and the way we treated each other, and the way now come to find out later, she was not honest with me, but it was, the relationship was like brother and sister. Like we were so close with each other that people on the outside did not understand it, and they were often very manipulated and confused by, like, they didn't know the truth about what was happening. They didn't. Like, and unfortunately for that situation, it usually ended up that they believed her lies. So, and how this all ties into witchcraft is, at that age, I was a very strong Christian. I was a very devout Christian. Ever since I was reborn at age 17 or 18, I've always been a devout Christian. It didn't matter whether it was around drugs, guns, sex, prison, cars, police, this, that, church, strip clubs. I was always centered in Christ, and I never once displayed any type of loyalty towards Satan over God. I didn't even think about Satan. I didn't even consider his existence. So when I met this girl, she was a huge fan of Harry Potter. She had very particular tattoos that I didn't know what they were. And she also had a 666 phone number. And that didn't mean anything to me. That was almost like a joke. I remember the first time I noticed that her number, and I'm not saying like 916-586-2061. Her number was 916-66 beep beep beep. It had 666 in a row. It was clearly a 666 phone number. And so when I met her, I just didn't think anything of it. I never, and we went through our relationship. We got an apartment, and we lived together for 2 years. We had been dating for a year. We moved in together, and we weren't legally married by the United States. But mind you, the marriage to me is a creation of God in the Bible. So for the United States to say that they, document marriage and they legalize it and they make it what it is, like, that's cool with me. I'm not going to say they're wrong for that, but I'm not going to, if you ask me if I was married, I'm going to say yes. And they say, okay, well, what, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, I don't have the documents, but we were married by the Bible. We were married by God, and we both knew it. Because at that point, being how serious religion is, my religion, Christianity, with marriage, and I sat her down and I took the role of a male in the family, and I said, look, if you want to do this, we're going to be married by the Bible, and I don't care what parents or people say about if we're officially married or not, but we're going to be married before God. I don't care if you want to say jump the broomstick, blah, blah, blah. Like, we sat down and we read the scriptures as marriage by the Bible. And we declared each other as being married. And so when we first moved in with each other, things were awesome. We had our arguments, we had our fights. We were both very bickery and spickety and very opinionated and stubborn. But we had been that way the whole first year, so we accepted that. But what happened is that I came to the realization, for my own safety and for my own mental health, that I couldn't live my whole life knowing that I had screwed around with other girls that first year and she didn't know about it. Because in my mind, if we had kids, which we were planning on doing, we were planning on having children. If we had children and later on in life, these kids were running out around the house, I couldn't live with the fact knowing that I had basically I didn't lie to her, but she didn't know I was seeing other women. And she hated the other women that I had been having sex with. Not because she knew them personally, but because she was jealous of them, just because she saw them on my social media and she knew they had a presence in my life, but she didn't know I was having sex with them. So for her, she hated these women and she was so jealous of them, but she didn't know I was actually having sex with them. So it was like, I came to a point where I had to tell her, for the sake of our relationship and for the safety of our children and our future, I didn't want her to live her whole life thinking that she was the only one screwing me that first year. And I just couldn't live with it. It wasn't right. I felt too guilty and too disgusting and too low, even though I gave her that disclaimer. And this is where a lot of people don't know what a lot of people who are involved in this relationship and judged it from the outside, being it the police, our families, friends, families, neighbors, etc., because it got very violent. She, to the point of she almost killed me one time over her suicide attempt. I warned her. I told her that I wasn't ready for a committed relationship, and I told her basically I'm a crazy boy. I'm a crazy guy. I'm still out running amok. I'm not ready to be your boyfriend or your husband. And then a year later, when I was, and we moved in and got married, once we were in that apartment, I had to tell her. It was too much for me. I couldn't imagine. I just couldn't. So I told her every detail that she wanted to know. And man, was it rough. But I had to do it as God is my, standing before God, as I had included God into our marriage. I couldn't live with it. I couldn't do any of it. And so what happened was, her and a couple of these other women, they all went psychotic and turned against me. And they started doing the most insane things. They would hack my social media and change my relationship status and do posts on my page and block me on their social media. And they would collaborate together and they would collaborate together and take me to work. My wife would take me to work, and then the other one would be at work and be yelling, and they would yell together about my sexual secrets, or they would yell about dirty things. They would make up stories and yell them across my workplace when I was trying to walk into the locker room to clock in or out, and people would just be looking at them, and they would post and do the most insane, yell at me, drive me places and abandon me there. And I couldn't pay my own rent. I had gone into this situation where she had a better job than me, and she told me that she was going to buy me Mustang GTs, and she had already bought me Gucci belts and bought me jewelry and bought me food almost all the time, every other day of the week, literally. That's why I fell so hard in love with this woman, this girl. And she's still a girl. She's not a woman. She almost became a woman. She was a woman. She was becoming a woman when I met her, but she chose to turn back, and that's her choice. And whatever, that's her thing, or that's my opinion. But anyways, so the first thing that happened was she smashed a guitar on me from behind. She broke. Now, it didn't shatter like you would see in a wrestling match, a WWF match, but she took the acoustic guitar she had bought for me and she smashed it. And I was playing a different guitar sitting down, and I had turned my back to her because she wouldn't stop yelling at me. Ever since I had told her that I had seen other women that first year, she went into a psychotic rage of abusive domestic violence towards me, and I had never beat on women. The only type of violence I had ever been involved in was man on man, be it from gangs, be it from angry men who I had cheated with their girl, or the only time I had ever been involved with violence from a woman was my mom slapping me when I was younger for cussing, me slapping my sister when I was like 5 because she lied to me. And for some reason I had thought that my parents taught me that because they slapped me for either cussing or lying, I felt that it was okay to slap my sister because she lied to me. I remember it. We were sitting in our bedroom. All 3 of us shared a room, me and my brother and sister in Pasadena. And she lied to me. She told me, like, mom and dad want you to go do something. And I knew that it was a lie. And it made me so mad that she lied to my face. And mind you, we were like 5 and 6 years old, 5 and 7. And I slapped her. And I've never touched my sister again. That was when we were kids. And it's pretty freaking funny, actually. But, and then one time when I was 18, I got jumped by some Bloods and some Northsiders or something in Roseville, California at Sunsplash Nightsides. And girls jumped me too. There was women who jumped in and jumped me also with the guys. But I didn't even have a chance I was getting beat up on the ground. I got knocked out. I got hit and dropped and got kicked and stomped on. And there was so I had never been, and I had one ex-girlfriend who was 10 years older than me, and she had been to prison for identity theft and fraud, and there was one day where I told her I have to go to work, and she refused to and she was also a drug addict, and she was probably smoking drugs for sex. Like, I basically moved into like kind of a rough area based on my income and met someone who was like on government assistance, and also like she was pretty freaking like hood. Like, she was very like street, like she had been exposed to the streets, and like we ended up like dating, and then one day she just refused to let me go to work, and she pulled a knife on me and ended up popping my tire that night because I called her and her neighbors tweakers, and it was insane. And but other than that, I was not a violent person towards women. I had never been tempted by violence. I was never abusive or anything like that. So that, excuse me, these people decided they wanted to walk extremely close to my vehicle. And so that was never whatever she portrayed. Now, she, on the other hand, had been exposed, I think, to a lot of violence, be it herself and her family, and you know, like her you know, like, I don't know if her ex beat on her, or if she beat on her ex, or if the people or for her stepdad who raped her beat on her, but she had obviously been exposed to a lot of violence, and a lot of domestic violence at that, because she knew very well how to participate in domestic violence, and also how to cover it, and how to make it seem like it was the male, which is insane. And so, the most violence that had happened in my family was getting spanked. When we were younger, if we disobeyed our mother, she told us to wait for our dad to get home. And then when our dad got home, we had a wooden spoon that it was probably like 1.5 feet big, and it was like one side of it had a duck's head carved in it, and the other half was probably like it was a big soup spoon, like for stirring pots. It had probably like a 4 by 5 inch wooden spoon. So it was like, the spoon itself was like this big, and it was wooden, and that's how we didn't get beat. Our dad never beat us. But we got slapped and spanked until the point that we stopped misbehaving. And then when I got older, you know, I wrestled a couple times with my sorry, that was awesome. God, I asked, I prayed a blessing for that. When I got older, you know, I wrestled a couple times with my mom and dad, but at that point, I just got thrown out of the house, and either they threatened to call authorities on me, or I got kicked out of the house. And there was no more violence in our house. It was never a question. Neither me and my dad have never come to blows, and it just, thank God that was a good thing in our family. And so when she started beating, I had been beat up bad a few times. I had been in a lot of fights growing up because of gangs. And I know I'm white, don't worry about it. There's another video that's called My Testimony. You can go watch that and see my experience with gangs. Please don't judge me. I'm not saying I'm black or I'm Mexican, but I mean, gangs have been around since, you know, tribal days. Gangs of New York. There's Italian gangs. Those are white people. There's Italian, there's, you know, Irish gangs. Unfortunate. I mean, it's just that most people today relate gangs to blacks and Mexicans, but it's irrelevant. And the truth of the matter is, I was in a lot of fights because of that, because of gangs. And then there was a couple other, and I had been jumped, you know, by groups a few times, and there was a couple friends who abandoned me, and then there was a couple other friends who were involved with the same gang as me, who we went back and got revenge, or he taught me how to stick up for myself and how to get, you know, he helped me get back. We would go back and then there was other times when I cheated with someone's wife who was on a military deployment, and I have absolutely no hard feelings towards this person, and I completely understand why he did this. But basically, before he went in the military, I introduced him to this woman, right? And she was like one of my high school crushes, but we never got together. So I introduced him to this woman, and then they ended up becoming like super serious and like planning to get married. So he had a rough childhood and a rough teenage years. So his solution to that was to join the military. So he joined the army and he got deployed. And when he was deployed, I lost my virginity to this woman that he was supposed to be getting married to when he got back. And they were still committed while he was gone. And this was my high school crush. So I didn't become sexually active till very late in my life. So basically what happened was he had already been through the legal system. He'd been through juvie and boys camp and, you know, youth authority. I don't know if he went to youth authority California, but he was basically in high school, and he had the image of a prison inmate. So he was like, not only was he like, I mean, there was tough guys in my high school. There was wrestlers and football stars, but this was like the tough guy in high school. I mean, he's in high school with what looks like prison tattoos, and his face is like, I don't know how to put, you could tell he looked more aged than he really was, because it looked like he had been through a lot, in all due respect, than the average 16 or 17 year old. So what happened was, I went on a trip to Washington, D.C., and I had my first sexual experience with a girl over there. So I came back to California, and I'm doing ecstasy, and I'm listening to Mac Dre, and I'm not very Christian at this point. And I'm just caught up in this whole like pimping and like trying to be a player and like thinking that you're top dog and like basically like you screw and do whatever you want. So I was young and stupid, and I decided, okay, well, he's in the military and I don't really care, so I'm gonna stick my pee-pee and get my pee-pee wet for the first time. And I did, and I lost my and when I say sexual experience, I'll tell you straight up. I met a girl in Washington, D.C., in the hotel. We had foreplay, we didn't actually have sexual intercourse, but we had foreplay, with our hands in the hallway of the hotel. And that was my first sexual experience ever, besides laying in bed and kissing. So when I got home, it was a whole new world. And this is when I was like 18. So a lot of people, like I said, I was a late bloomer when it came to sex. So I screwed up, and I lost my virginity to a girl who was in a committed relationship, to a person who had been through a lot of hard times in life and trusted me, and who I had introduced them, which is even more cheesy on my part. And not to mention, he's deployed on the military. And if you don't know, or if you aren't aware, I can't speak for a girl in the military, a man in the military, but I can only imagine that it is one of the most hurtful and heartbreaking experiences for a woman to cheat on you while you're offering up your life for your country overseas. Especially with someone who you consider a best friend and a best friend and someone you trust, an equal male. So the guy calls me, and I tell him what happened, and basically he comes back and he wants to kill me, and I'll leave the story. I'm gonna leave, the rest of the story it's not really important, but like there was a couple situations where me being the less experienced fighter and being the smaller person, I got beat the crap out of me a couple times. And I didn't get robbed, and I didn't get, like, I don't know how to say it, but like it was an honorable, for the most part, situation. But I got smacked up good a couple times, like beat up. Like I came home bloody, like my face was bloody, and like I lived by a street code, and you might think that's cheesy, but I really did, where like you don't report that type of thing to the police. You don't go press charges against a man who took street justice on you. And I didn't expect my family to get involved either, because my family is like a hard-working, traditional Christian family that comes from like farmers and military, Navy, Air Force, Army, and like you don't get involved with street crime and drugs. And I was the first one from my family to really be involved with like street gangs and drugs and violence in the streets that is away from the military or police or anything like that. So my family is like, just like, I didn't want to tell them, but they just see that I'm all beat up and bloodied. So fast forward, I tell my wife that I had in fact been seeing other women, and she starts going insane on me. And I never experienced that level of domestic violence. But what happened, so it only grew worse. And finally, I ended up getting smacked up by her, because the way that I was raised is you don't hit women, you don't fight back. And I tried to restrain her, I tried to hold her down and do all that, and that's pretty much what it ended up becoming. But she's a really strong person, and she would also surprise attack me, and she would also threaten suicide. She would swallow bunches of pills and guzzle alcohol, and I had to reach in her mouth and pull the pills out, and and then like she would hold knives to her wrists, and then she eventually ended up stabbing me, and then she would smash glass over me while I was asleep. I'm pretty sure there was a couple times I was sloppy, like blacked out drunk asleep, and she like broke some of my ribs or like dropped heavy objects on me. And like a couple times, you know, like she would take me places. Like she went completely psycho and I ended up staying with her for 2 years because I had committed to her via God in a marriage, and you don't just walk away from something like that if you read the Bible verses. And if I would have been more trained and knowledgeable about the Bible, then I maybe would have had the opportunity to do that. But I was going off of what was Hebrews, and in Hebrews, it basically says, if one of them if one of the two people is a non-believer, the believer has to stay with the non-believer for the sake of any possible children, either A, until the non-believer cheats, or B, the non-believer leaves on their own. And that is from the Bible in Hebrews. And now there's other Bible verses in different parts that say you can divorce, but at the time I was basing off that. Being as more wise and knowledgeable as I am now, I could have taken other scriptures and left the relationship probably, or divorced her and got away, but it was part of my journey with God, and I don't regret a single part of it. But there was one night where she was hitting me in the face just over and over and over, because she had got to the point where like something got cross-wired in her brain, and something from her past experiences with prostitution, it was almost like she wanted to become a pimp now. Like 12 years later, after being a prostitute on the internet, after becoming a phlebotomist and cleaning up her life and wanting to get married, something went haywire, and she decided that she like wanted to like cheat and like hit up old Johns. And like I would catch text messages on her phones that said like, I want to fly you out here and F the crap out of you. And like she would say that I want to like suck you off, and like money was discussed, and it was really, really disgusting and hurtful for me, for a Christian, you know, young man who couldn't even pay his own rent, and let alone had opened up his heart to this woman, this girl, and she just went completely psycho. And so one night she just kept hitting me in the face, and I knew she was about to break my glasses. And as soon as she started to do that, I had to kick her. I kicked her right in her face because she was hitting me, and I fell backwards onto the bed, and I ended up just out of pure instinct kicking her in her cheek, because I didn't have any money to buy new glasses. I had no money to buy new glasses, and I knew that if she broke my glasses, I wasn't going to be able to work. And out of instinct, I just kicked her, and it spooked her. And it was one of the most sad moments in my life, because the girl and the woman that I loved, I just watched her face just get shook. And looking back, I probably should have just kept taking it like a man, because for all I know, she might have just eventually got it out of her system and we could have been happy. But I don't know, because she was a liar and a cheater. And anyways, what happened, and it happened for the better. And I'm at where I'm at today, not, you know. And so how does all this tie into witching? So when I first met her, she had a 666 phone number, and I didn't think anything of it. Well, now, years later, or like 2 years later in our apartment, she's doing stuff like wrapping belts around her neck, wrapping bags around her neck, cutting her stomach with 3 lines like they do in the Blair Witch Project. And then eventually, like, I started accusing her of being a witch. I was like, I finally get it. I was like, you're on some weirdo witchcraft stuff, because her and all her friends and Harry Potter and her tattoos and her sister and the goths at her sister's events, because her sister helped host goth night, which I loved going to goth night, and I still would go. But like, I started realizing like, okay, there's a little more to this than just 666 on your phone number. Like, I didn't know that these people were like summoning spirits of worry and like creating demons and using demons and worshiping Satan and doing deals with money and lying and using witchcraft to contact police, and using Like, I had no idea any of that even existed. I was just some naive Christian boy who was like, oh, I've been to prison and I need to work a job and pay my rent. You know, and I have a good wife who wants to buy me a Mustang and pay half my rent, and I love her to death, and we have good sex. Well, what ended up happening was I put on okay, so she had a lizard. She refused. Okay, so this is what happened. She left the apartment. And and she left her cats there. And I'm like, wait a second. I love these cats so much. But you're not going to dump your cats on me, and you're going to go live with your sister and go to bars and be a whore. And when you're still supposed to be married to me, and I'm going to sit at home and take care of the cats while you're off being a floozy. No. So I demanded her to come get her cats because they were hers. No matter how much I loved those cats, they were her cats. They were her cats to begin with. And so she came and got the cats. And the next thing was her mom's ashes. And I smoked weed in that house all the time, in that apartment all the time. And she had her mom's ashes, her mom's ashes were in some random painted purple hat, red hat lady, purple hat society, whatever it is, box filled with other trinkets and items. And it was not like an official urn or anything. And it was so I said, look, Mary, sorry about that. I didn't mean to say almost. So I said, look, Mary, you got to come get your mother's ashes. I cannot have these ashes in my living space while I'm smoking weed and living here. It's too freaking weird for me. I'm not going to have it. So, and this is when I started really learning about witchcraft. She refused to come get the ashes. Now she came and got her cats. Once I found out that our cats, I miss Artemis and Luna so much. Once I found out that her cats had been peeing all over everything, and that like me and her cats had been like using the restroom under witchcraft at the same time, like, I knew something was weird. I'm like, why will she refuse to get her dead's mom ashes, who she claims are so important to her, out of our apartment? Like, if they were so important to her, why would she not come pick them up? Like, there has to be some type of like voodoo or witchcraft going on here. So it only got more crazy from there. So she also had a pet lizard. And what I found out is that this pet lizard, she always told me that her pet, this type of lizard, a gecko lizard, a leopard gecko, it only had to eat and drink water once or twice every month or 2 weeks. Well, that's true that leopard geckos can survive after only drinking water every once or twice weeks. But this gecko leopard was miserable. And I had no idea. This animal had been living under it had been living under and I'm going to make a photo slideshow and upload it so you can see all the videos and stuff I documented from this experience in my life with my introduction to witchcraft. And it had been living under our pantry. Now, I didn't even realize this part. So it had been living near our food supply, and it was basically completely tortured. So this poor lizard was so dry and miserable. And when she left, I made her take the cats, but then I looked at the lizard and I'm like, dude, this thing is miserable. So I went to the pet store and I had no money. And I had been robbed. I had been scammed too. I'd been scammed for like $5,000 from my withdrawal limit. So I was very bad. I needed money for food. And it was during COVID, and I lost my job. And it was like one of the heights of my life. And So I finally got like $20. And I decided, dude, I'm gonna go buy food for this lizard before I feed myself. I'm not gonna allow this lizard to sit in my apartment and be tortured by anymore. So I went to the pet store, and while I'm at the pet store buying crickets and worms for this leopard gecko, who I see, and she used to have a snake. She used to have a snake that she fed mice to. But I made her get rid of it when we moved in together. I said, no. I said, you can have the lizard and the cats, but you're not going to bring a snake. We're not going to have a snake in the house. We're not. And she reluctantly gave up her snake, but because I just refused to have a pet snake in a 1-bedroom apartment. And so when I went to the pet store, I see these feeding mice, and they're female feeding mice, and I realized these mice have such a miserable life. All they do is get put into this cage, piled and piled and piled on top of each other, and then they just get fed to the snake. They get brought to someone's house, and then they get fed to a snake. And I'm like, that's such a terrible life. That's such a miserable life. So I bought 2 of these female mice as pets. And I don't remember how. I must have gotten more money. But I bought 2 of the female mice as pets. And I got them, and she had a cage for the lizard. Whatever the case, it worked out. We had dirt, and I got home and I fed this lizard, and I gave it water, and I started feeding him all the time. And this lizard went from a miserable, dry, dusty, old-looking, like poor, dying creature who I honestly believe she may not have even known it, but this animal was like being tortured for Satan in our apartment. And I also got these 2 white little female mice because I just could not walk away from them without at least trying to free 2 of them. It was like watching children being it was worse than children. It was like I just couldn't accept it. So I get home from this adventure, and I realize that I had left the lizard's heating lamp on. And the first time I had ever tried to care for this lizard, because she always took care of the lizard. She always fed the lizard. It wasn't my lizard. I didn't care about the lizard. I took care of the cats. I cleaned up after those cats. I mean, me and those cats were gangsters together, because at one point, even the Artemis, the black cat, the male cat, my ex-wife slammed a crock pot on the floor for absolutely no reason other than to cause a ruckus. In the crock pot, and this is at like 5 in the morning or 8 in the morning. She's half naked. She's running around in her underwear, and she takes and she's a 240-pound, 5'2", 5'3" girl. The cutest little chubby. I mean, I'm not even going to attack her body size, but she was the cutest little, I loved everything about her. And she picks up our green crock pot that's hers, and she slams it into the ground, and this ceramic crock pot shatters, and one of the pieces of ceramic goes and hits the cat in the forehead and cuts our cat's head open. Not to the point where the cat had to go to the vet, but I ended up getting a similar scar later at a motel after we divorced. And it's just insane. It's like I think it would be like a pieman scar, for the sake of anyone who really knows about witchcraft. It's basically like someone tried to kill you and they failed. So it would be a pieman scar, and you see people with them all the time. If you ever see someone with a scar that goes like from here to here, it basically it's like someone tried to kill them and they didn't. And so that's my opinion. That's my studies. You don't have to agree to it. You don't have to. It's completely up to you. But anyways, the cat got that scar before me, and then a year or 2 after the cat got that scar, I got the same scar. So, but I never took care of the lizard. So I go down and I realize this lizard's being tortured, and I have money enough. I have like 40, I don't know how much money I got, but I got money. So, and I had been struggling for food and gas and weed, and but I had my rent paid, so I had a good month or two in my apartment left. And and I realize, and so I decide for the sake of God, I'm going to feed this lizard before I feed myself. I'm going to put that, because no one else has put this animal's life on priority for so long. So I decide that I'm going to feed the lizard before I feed myself. So I go and I buy lizard food, and I pick up two female mice, and I come home, and I realize I left the lizard's heating light on, and I set it on the ground while it was on, and I took off in a hurry to go to the pet store. And when I got back, I moved the lamp, and we had like laminate floors. They were like fake hardwood floors, thank God. And there was a black, perfect circle burned into the ground, like sizzling with smoke. And I promise to you, it looked like it was degrees away from igniting a fire. And it was so eerie. And there is so much witchcraft revolving around circles and perfect circles. And it was so, and like I said, I'm a Christian, and here I am 2 years later, I meet a girl with a 666 in her phone number, and I think it's a joke. And here I am now after getting stabbed and beat up and abandoned, and no one believes me and everyone believes her. And here I go, and I find this animal that's being tortured in our house, and there's a perfect circle that's burned into our floor now. And like I said, I'm going to upload all the pictures of this and all the videos and stuff like that. And I'm just blown away. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, I've experienced God and Jesus Christ, but I have never experienced Satan like this. And I didn't realize that even though Satan was a creation of God, the way that I came to understand it was basically like he stole tools, because Satan was a angel before he was Satan. According to the Bible, according to Christian studies, I come to see that he has stolen tools from God's shed. So imagine if God has a house and a tool shed, and in the tool shed is all the different weapons and miracles and wonders for all the angels and for God. And the way I see it is like Satan and all the demons who were kicked out of heaven, they stole tools from God's shed. Now their tools will never compare to God's miracles and wonders, and they will never overpower or be victorious to the angels or to God. But it doesn't change the fact that what I learned was Satan also has supernatural capabilities. So I've got two mice. I've got a lizard who has been completely rehabilitated and rejuvenated, and these two mice and the lizard have started to live together in the same cage, and they start playing jokes on each other, and the mice bury the lizard all but his head sometimes, like he's in the sand. And you know, it's like I said I had two female mice, and the two mice, it's like an old man lizard, and they joke at each other, and they're getting along, and the lizard's not big enough that he would want to eat them, and the mice don't bother him. And at one point I put worms in the cage for him to eat, and the mice started biting the heads. The female mice started biting the heads off the worms. And after the lizard watched the female mice bite the heads off the worms, the next time I put worms in the cage, he almost looked so sad and distraught that he would not eat worms anymore. It's almost like he watched because he used to just go up to the worms and bite them right up. Now crickets he would still eat, but he would know, like, every time I put worms in the cage with the mice there, it almost looked like he wanted to cry. He would turn his head away and look away, probably due to the fact that he had been tortured so long. Like, it's crazy how much I learned how human like these animals became. So the next significant thing that happened was I'm starting to realize how real this witchcraft is that my ex-wife and different women in my life are involved in, and different men in my life are involved in, and different people and different groups I never thought were real involved in witchcraft. I finally come, and I'm like, when my mom was younger, when I was younger, my mom showed us this movie, The Witches, based on the book by Roald Dahl. And I remember it being one of my favorite movies when I was younger. And I'm saying like young, like 4 and 5 years old, when I lived in Southern California, like young. And the book, we read the book. We read a lot of Roald Dahl books. So I decide I'm going to go on YouTube. And mind you, I have not watched this movie since I was 5 or 6 years old. And I remember absolutely nothing about it, other than the fact that there's one part where the head witch takes her mask off and she's like big and scary. That's the only thing that I remember about this movie. So I go on YouTube, and the first thing I notice about this movie, all this is true and miraculous, and all glory to God and Jesus Christ. And the first thing I notice is that it was made in 1990, and that's the year I was born. So right off the bat, it's like, okay, this feels like a birthday present for me. And so I put on the movie and I watch it. And just besides the fact that the little boy in this movie is so similar to me. He's like this little white boy who's blonde hair and glasses, and he marches around and he blah, blah, blah. And then his grandma gives him 2 little white mice. And I promise to you, I can't, if you don't want to believe it, you don't have to. But remember, just within the last 2 weeks before I ever had watched this movie again, I went and I bought 2 little white mice. They were females. And the only reason I bought them was because I felt bad for them at the pet store, and I knew my ex-wife had been feeding them to her snake. And I just wanted to at least save 2 of them. Now in the movie, and I had not thought about watching the movie, I had not watched the movie again, and I did not remember from the movie that he was given 2 mice in the movie. I just now, once all this crap started happening and there's holes being burned in my floor and animals being tortured, I decided I'm gonna watch this movie because I remember it from my childhood and I want to watch it again. And I had been, and I had also been watching like Hereditary at the time and like Evil Dead and stuff like that. And in Hereditary, this witch has her mom burning in her attic. And my ex-girlfriend had refused to come pick up the ashes of her dead mom. So all this stuff was starting to be like, witches were like coming into my life at 1,000 miles per hour. And then I put on this movie that was made the year I was born, and this little boy who almost looks like me when I was a little boy. If you don't believe me, I'll show you the pictures. Except his name is Luke, my name's Matthew. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. My favorite car is the Lincoln Mark 8. And then his grandma gives him 2 white mice, and I have my 2 white mice sitting in my apartment. And at this point, my mind is completely blown to the point where I'm worshiping God, because it's one of the few, there's only a couple other times where I've been so flabbergasted by everything going on around me, and it's just crazy. So after that, I went to disassemble this table in the front room that was my ex-wife's, because I wanted it out of the kitchen. And while I'm disassembling the kitchen, and mind you, I'm a Christian, and she came from a family where her real dad, not her stepdad, her real dad ended up living in a separate house on the same property as her and her mom and her sisters, and he died of a heart attack. Now, if you know anything about witchcraft, and you do or do not know, I'll leave it at that. Just out of respect, he died in a separate house on the same property as his wife and his daughters of a heart attack. Later on, and these are obese people who, so later on, when my wife was like 12 or 13, her mom died of a heart attack. She has her dead mom's ashes in our apartment, and she's refusing to come pick them up. And I smoke in the apartment all the time. So I'm sitting there trying to disassemble this table, and a wooden table that was given and built to her by her real birth dad, not her stepdad. And while I'm disassembling this table piece by piece, I'm underneath the table, and I'm underneath the table, and the next step that I do has this metal piece from the table hanging above my face. And I was very lucky, but if I would have made one wrong move, this metal piece would have come slamming down right onto my face and basically like either seriously maimed me or killed me. And mind you, she comes from a family where they're all dying from heart attacks, and they have 666 phone numbers, and they torture animals, and there's perfect circles being burned in the floor. And Jesus was a carpenter. And witches loved the fact that Jesus was crucified, or to attempt to crucify Christians again. And all I hear is a little whisper and voice in my head that says, "Oh, so you want to be a Christian so bad?" And this table almost collapses onto me, stabbing me in the face. But I survived it, and it did not fall on my face, and it was almost humorous, but it was insulting. So that's one part. Then the next thing that happens is I can't stand the fact that her mom's dead ashes are still in the house. So I decide, I threaten her, and mind you, all stuff off the record, this part's kind of illegal, because in California, you can't moving ashes is basically like moving a body. And you can't just do it. You can't just move it around and take it places and like, but at this point, I've abandoned all U.S. government laws. I'm done being voodooized in witchcraft after watching Hereditary and having my ex-wife attempt to stab me and having an arterial bleed that like inches away from my neck, to the point where if she would have killed me, she probably would have got away with it, and everyone in the whole area would have believed that I was the one beating on her, which is a complete lie. And being refused medical service, but eventually given stitches. I've had enough. So I'm telling her, look, if you don't come pick up your mom's ashes, because she's living with her sister now, and I still have the apartment, I'm going to dump them in the river. I'm going to go down to the American River, or because we didn't really live by an ocean, but I'm going to dump them in. I'm going to take your mom's ashes and I'm going to dump them in a river. And that's that. And I've had enough of it. And so, and I didn't really want to do that, but I needed her to come get them. And I needed her to, and maybe it had something to do with the fact that like her crap had killed her mom or given her mom a heart attack. I don't know. But if you know about witches and voodoo, it's usually along those lines. Like, her crap killed her mom, so maybe her mom's dead crap will help kill me because it's just crazy like that. So I stick her mom's ashes in this big old box that's bigger than a shoebox. It's a very randomly sized box. It's probably like 10 inches by 8 inches. It's not a shoebox, and it's a handmade wooden box with figurines and paintings on it and trinkets. And like I said, her mother, rest in peace, who we ended up coming at peace with each other, was in the Red Hat Society or the Purple Hat Society or whatever. So I put it in my backpack, and I ride her mom's ashes down to my place of work, and I put it in my locker at work. And I promise to you, this box fits almost perfectly inside my work locker. Like, each side of the box has like this much space in my work locker. It just slides right in like it was meant to be. And I've never once measured my work locker or brought my ex-wife's dead's mom's ashes to my work locker to see if they'd fit. Nothing like that. And it's just like insane all these different things that are happening. The movie, the circle on the ground, the ashes in the locker, and so, but what happens is I didn't know that other people were so sensitive to dead bodies or ashes for that matter. So when I'm working and trying to, you know, like focus on work, I notice that all my coworkers are becoming like nauseated and like nauseated and like running out of the break room. so I realize that people are like aware that there's probably like, you know, ashes in the break room right now, because I don't know if they just have good ears for people's worries, because a lot of other people become witches at very young age and they become worry witches, or I don't know what, but they were it wasn't like I got away with it discreetly. So I get off work and I put it back in my backpack and I realize, okay, that's not going to work, because the whole company is like running out of the break room and like trying to figure out what's going on, which is pretty freaking funny. And so I take it back home, and then I finally come to this feeling where it's like her mom was almost as mad at her in the afterlife as I was at at Mary also. I'm so sorry for using that name. I can't. Please forget that. In Jesus Christ's name, I ask and pray, ignore that, forget it. It doesn't matter who, it's a name. I'm not attacking anyone personally in this video. It's a testimony towards God's power, really. And so I take it back home and I decide what I'm going to do is put it in the bathroom. And this sounds weird, but like, it wasn't so it would be around poop, but it was almost like I could feel her mom's spirit. It was almost like her mom's spirit was in purgatory and she finally was like passing on to heaven, because my ex-wife had told me that like her mom became a Mormon like at one point, became like when Mormons are super devout Christians. Whether you're Catholic, Mormon, Presbyterian, whatever, Mormons follow Jesus Christ, even if they have doctrines or books that I don't agree with. They follow Jesus Christ. I believe that they're saved. That's a whole nother video. But they're very Jesus Christy and very like devout, you know, evangelists and whatnot. So somewhere along the lines, all of a sudden, me and my ex-wife's mother's ashes have some type of peace. And you know, me being naked in the shower in the bathroom, I put her mom. I know it's weird, but like, it was the only thing that made sense. It wasn't going to be in the kitchen. It wasn't going to be in the living room where I'm going to smoke. It wasn't going to be in the bedroom where I smoke and I sleep. It was going to be in the bathroom where I shower and where I'm, you know, I know. But like, so I put the box of ashes in the bathroom cupboard and I cover it with a white blanket and I take pictures of it with my flash, and it's super eerie. It's almost like you can see ghosts in it, and it was super cool. But like, so that, and then another thing that happened was I at my ex-wife, she had the phone number, 666 phone number, 91666 blah blah blah, and I told her to go get, and this was a couple weeks before all that different stuff I just explained. This is 2 or 3 weeks before that. This is while we were still together. We were still living together, and it was at the very last string before she moved out. And there was too many exes and boyfriends and old Johns hitting her up on her phone, and she was doing too much with her old number. And I told her, hey, look, if you want to still try to make this work, then you need to change your phone number. You need to get a new phone number. It wasn't because of the 666 thing. It was because there was too many people messaging her and calling her on her old phone number from her old life, and she needed to break away from that. So she goes to the store, gets a new number, comes home, and sure enough, she has another 91666 blah 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 number. Now it's a different number, but just, and that she probably requested, so I wouldn't say that it was like miraculous or coincidental, but she did. And it was just it was so insane to me that it just, so I'm wrapping up now. That I'm gonna make a whole new series that's called the crazy witching stories, and this is going to be the first one because it was the main one that got me, that God used to reveal that this was a real thing and that this existed. And ew and you know, that's the main one. So the final chapter of this part of this story, after all that is said and done, there was one point where Zoe bought me, it was a birthday present or a Christmas present. Like I said, she took, or excuse me, Mary. I'm so sorry. You know, I hope, I really hope everyone, that's a made up, well, that was a made up name too. Mary, you know, both names are made up. That, well, anyways. So there had one point where my ex-wife had bought me a very nice guitar. Like, she took very good care of me while we were in good standing. She even like compensated for her insane behavior sometimes by like buying me nice stuff, because she had the better job. That was her way of expressing herself, was buying me stuff, and I was very accepting of that. So she bought me a very nice guitar, a $1,500, $1,100 Gibson Les Paul. A Gibson Les Paul. It was a beautiful guitar, and I can't wait till I get it back. I plan on, with God, getting it back. So I go about, I love this guitar, I take care of this guitar, I play this guitar. And here I am now in 2023. She bought me this guitar in 2019, 2020. I picked it out. She did not pick out this guitar. She knows absolutely very little about guitars. And she told me a price limit, and she told me, go pick out the guitar you want. I picked the guitar I wanted. I didn't even, and that was that. I owned this guitar, and years later, I'm going through a semi-homeless situation to where I have to put this guitar on pawn, right? I have to put this guitar on loan. And if you know anything about Gibsons, they have a serial number on the back of the headstock. And it's usually like, I don't know, a 7 or 8 digit number, 8 or 9 digit number. It consists of, if you go and you Google Gibson serial numbers, you can see that you can see what each number means. And I've had, me and one of my best friends have had many Gibsons throughout our lives. We've had Les Pauls, we've had SGs, we've had acoustics, we've had Telefenders, we've had all kinds of different guitars. Me and my best friend and his dad had many, many, many nice guitars. And if you read the Gibson serial numbers, they mean like the year, the model, the blah, blah, the color. I don't remember exactly, but not once that I went on the internet, I picked this guitar out, it was on sale, and I bought, and I got it. I never once checked the serial number. Never once. The only time I had ever checked the serial numbers on my Gibsons was if I was trying to figure out whether or not it was authentic and where it had come from. If I was checking one. And I just got the guitar and I owned it. Now, 3 years later, I am in a situation where I put this guitar on loan. And they document the serial number. So I'm going through my loan papers and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I look at the documentation because they wrote down the serial number, and sure enough, the serial number is like 587-666-273 or something like that. And I'm like, no way. No freaking way. And I look at this and I'm like, this can't be right. I'm like, this guy at the pawn shop must have pulled a joke on me and tried to be funny, because after I just got done here I am single 2 years later, still trying to get my life back together from all that insanity about witchcraft that I just told you about. And I come to realize that this $1,100 guitar that I picked out and never checked the serial number on has 666 in it. And I didn't believe it. And I couldn't go to the pawn shop and check the guitar myself because they're not going to let me just go back there and check the guitar. So I go and I remember, okay, Gibson documents all their guitars, and they send you, when you buy the guitar, if it still has the Gibson paperwork, it has a picture of the guitar with all the information on it. So I go to my storage unit, and sure enough, this freaking guitar that my ex-wife bought me, that I picked out, in the serial number has 666, and I've never seen that in a Gibson guitar. I've never once seen that, or I can't even imagine the odds of all that different things I've told you in this story. And then my favorite guitar that she bought me has that in the serial number. And that gives so much glory to Jesus Christ and God, because even all that, how it relates to Satan and the mark of the beast, is still a creation of God. And all Satan's power and wonder is still God's glory in Jesus Christ, the King and of this earth, and the Son of God is still, the glory to God is nothing compared to God's wonder and glory. But that gave me a kick in the pants, that I went from a little 27-year-old, boy working at a Cafe Rio in a sober living, not giving a toot about what was going to happen, to meeting this girl who has 666 in her phone number, and all that happening. So that's crazy witching story number 1. I got to wrap it up now. I got to go live life. I hope and I pray everyone has a good day. Don't let the power of Satan entice you. He's nothing without Christ. If you ever get in a situation where it starts being too much, go to Christ, worship God, and realize that all of Satan's power and wonder was stolen from God. Absolutely none of it was created by him, and God is the real powerful one. God is the all-knowing one. Praise God, hallelujah. Elohim, Jehovah the Messiah. Amen. Goodbye.